the next few days, Anna and I are inviting you into our home as we share with you in its entirety the Christmas story. We wanted to start tonight with the beginning. And as you can imagine, the beginning is going to take place in Genesis. We're all familiar with Genesis, especially those of us that have grown up in church. Genesis 1:1, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. And so we know this story good and well. Over 7 days, God created everything that we would come to know. And out of all of it, He created us. And I've mentioned before, through discipleship and as well as to the students at Sylvia, that out of all creation, man was the only part that was created from pre-existing materials. Everything else was just spoken into existence. So going through chapter 1 and chapter 2, we see this creation of heaven and earth and everything filling the earth, and then man and God speaking to what we all believe to be Christ and saying, let us make man in our image. And though this isn't supposed to be a sermon series, and I'm not going to take time to dive into what it means to be made into the image of God, it does carry a lot of weight for us. And it does talk about, in scriptures that we're going to look at here soon, about the first Adam and the last Adam. But then we come to chapter 3, the pivotal moment in all of creation. And we see everything that God has made. And He says after He's done with all of it, that it is good.
When God said that it was good, He was actually saying that He had made this world perfect, and He had made the inhabitants of the world perfect. It was the best that He could give us.
Which then sets the stage for chapter 3, where the villain of our story appears. And it's Satan in the form of a serpent. He appears to Adam and Eve. And yes, it was both of them, not just Eve, as some of us have grown up knowing. But he appears to Eve in chapter 3, and he says to the woman, did God actually say to you, you shall not eat of the tree in the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the tree in the garden, but God said, you shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the midst of the garden, neither shall you touch it, lest you die. And so the words begin to get twisted here from what God had said. And as we jump down to verse 15, God says to Eve, after Eve eats the fruit and after she passes it to Adam, and Adam takes a bite, their eyes are open and they notice that they are naked, and they cover themselves, and at that time God appears. And then God calls them out on what they have done. And He says to Eve, I will put enmity between you. Sorry, not Eve. He says to the serpent, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel.
Which this is actually a foreshadowing of the coming of Christ, whenever He would one day come and actually bridge that gap between Him and His creation again. Whenever this fall happened and the sin entered the world, there was immediately a divide that came between us and God. And this is telling us that Jesus is going to come. It's so cool that God, even from the foundations of the world, because He knew this before Adam and Eve ate the fruit, or before Satan twisted the truth, He knew that they were going to choose this. He knew that they were going to choose to disobey Him, that He was going to have to make a way to bring His creation back to Him again. So this is actually talking about how, yeah, Satan is going to do some awful things to God's creation. He's going to pollute it and hurt it. But in the end, Jesus is going to come, and through dying on the cross, through rising again from the dead, He is going to crush all of Satan's plans and lies and death and hell and the separation between us. He's going to crush all of that so that we can be with Jesus, with God again.
So then we jump back into the story, and God addresses Eve and shares with her the curse that will now be upon her for disobeying him. And then he turns to Adam and also shares the curse that will be on Adam because of their disobedience. And as Anna had mentioned, there was a time of perfection and living in the midst of God. Adam and Eve had the privilege of walking in person with the being of God through the Garden of Eden. Everything was perfect. There was no need for a sacrifice at this time. It was paradise and everything that God had intended it to be. But because of their disobedience, everything was now polluted. And then we come to verse 22 of chapter 3. Then the Lord God said, Behold, the man has come like one of us, in knowing good and evil. Now, lest he reached out his hand and take also of the tree of life and eat, and live forever. Therefore the Lord God sent him out from the Garden of Eden, to work the ground from which he was taken. He drove out the man, and at the east of the Garden of Eden he placed the cherubim, and a flaming sword that turned every way to guard the way to the tree of life.
So this part is actually a very beautiful testament to God's love and mercy for us. Not only is it just really cool that he has an angel with a flaming sword guarding the garden. I've always loved that part. But anyway, not only that, but by him sending Adam and Eve out of the garden, he's keeping them away from the tree of life. If they had eaten from the tree of life also, then we, all of us, would have lived forever in our sin, separated from God.
So from Genesis, I want us to look at a passage in Romans chapter 5. We're going to look at two verses, verse 12 and verse 15. It says, Therefore, just as sin came into the world through one man, and death through sin, so death spread to all men because all sinned. But the free gift is not like the trespass. For if many died through one man's trespass, much more have the grace of God and the free gift by the grace of that one man, Jesus Christ, abounded for many.
So this passage is really cool because it's basically saying that Adam, who was created in a perfect world, and he himself was created perfectly, he brought sin into the world, polluting everything. But then Christ, who's considered the second Adam, when Christ came into the world, he was perfect. He was without blemish. He was completely sinless. And from that space, he sacrificed himself in our behalf, pouring his grace and his love over us so that we could actually have that relationship with God again.
This is what we're going to be doing throughout the week. We're starting with the beginning, and we're going to go on through the rest of the Christmas story. And I know this is a little different, but we said that we were going to cover it in its entirety. The Christmas story doesn't start with Mary and Joseph and Gabriel appearing to them. The Christmas story started way back at the beginning. And so we wanted to cover that with you guys. So we hope that you'll join us for the rest of the week. We hope that these will be brief enough for you to take some time with your family to watch. But more importantly, we hope that you'll share this with somebody who needs to hear about this free gift that was mentioned in Romans. And we hope that you give it to them for Christmas. So from us to you, Merry Christmas, and we'll see you tomorrow night.
Merry Christmas.